All right, Mike Kinsey from Procter Gamble, a research fellow and olfactive scientist. We'll get into olfactory, the sense of smell, right, Mike?
Yes, exactly. Love to talk to sense of smell.
Sense of smell. Right now, I can see you, I can hear you, but we are speaking remotely. So we'll be talking sense of smell remotely here.
Yes, and that's the one thing that we can't do over the internet quite yet, but hopefully
No,
sometime soon.
at some point, they're going to figure that out.
Exactly.
Mike, how long have you been with Procter Gamble?
So I've been coming on 31 years. So this June, it'll be my 31st year at P&G.
And so, as an olfactive scientist, you are concerned with the sense of smell. Just to give people a sense, I got to visit Procter & Gamble last year, and I understand that like the company is one of the largest perfumeries in the world.
Yes. So yeah, P&G, first of all, it's great to have you in Cincinnati and talk perfume. But yeah, P&G is one of the largest users of perfume in the world. And as such, we treat the discipline quite carefully. We have about over 20 perfumers worldwide. And we just celebrated our 75th anniversary of having a perfumer training program. And so consistent with some of the biggest houses in the industry, P&G has been training perfumers almost the same length of time.
So talk to me about what it's like to be a perfumer, and then we'll talk a bit about what happens at Procter & Gamble, but just this expertise of blending science and art. How does one become a perfumer? What is the training process, the testing process like?
Yeah, so it's quite a fascinating industry. In fact, one that not many people know too much about. So to become a fully trained perfumer, it's basically a lifetime of learning is what I would call it. But the formal training program is at P&G is roughly 3 years. And the first year is dedicated simply to smelling a couple thousand ingredients and understanding each of those ingredients in multiple different ways. So one way is exactly how they smell over the course of time. So you'll smell an ingredient in the morning and you'll smell it first 5 minutes, hour, 8 hours, 24 hours. Understand the character of that material and then understand how long it lasts on a blotter.
How does the science work there? If I smell something in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, as a human, does it always smell the same, or does your brain sometimes play tricks on you as well? Does it change?
It'll change over time. So some materials, it's fascinating, again, that some of the materials will smell fruity when you first smell them, and then they'll transition into different notes throughout the day. But that's critical for a perfumer, is as you try to design perfumes that work across multiple stages of a use of a product, you need to learn how that fragrance is going to change over time based on how it smells over the course of a day.
Yeah, I remember when I was there, you were talking about like end notes, is it middle notes, base notes, that ultimately as you design a fragrance, you are thinking about layers here.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we talk about the top notes. Those
Top
are the
notes.
things.
Sorry, top notes. Yes, I missed that.
So that's what you smell right whenever, like if you spray a cologne or a perfume or you open the bottle, that's what you get first, the top notes. They tend to be more volatile, your citrus and fruity type of notes. Then over the course of the first several hours, you transition into the more floral type of notes. So rose, jasmine, muguet, those types of florals. And then towards the end of the day, you'll transition into more the heavier notes like the woods, the musks, the vanillas, and notes like that. But yeah, one of the fascinating parts of the art of perfumery is how do you layer those notes such that they smell beautiful all the way along the usage experience.
But back to the training program here, how competitive is it? How difficult is it? I mean, I think we all like would take pride. Oh, I got a pretty good sense of smell. I feel like how like surprising is it going through that processing, realizing, how unique it is to be able to have that really special sense that makes you a master perfumer?
Yeah, I will say we've learned it's not for everybody. So not everybody that walks in the door can be a master perfumer. And so, like if we go back to the training program, like I said, that first year is learning a couple thousand materials. The second year is learning how to blend them. So how do I make an apple? How do I make a rose? How do I make a jasmine, for example? And then the third year is then how do I start blending those into a product in order to deliver a scent that consumers would love in a Gain product or an Unstoppables product. And that's at the stage where a lot of people can learn the ingredients and a lot of people can learn how to blend them into these simple type of notes. But when it transitions into that third stage of how do you create winners, that's where you start to separate out the people who can do that consistently over time and some that have a harder time competing. But yeah, when you think of a typical brief, you might have 100 perfumers working on a specific project. And so it's extremely competitive and not necessarily for everybody.
And then how does agreement happen? Because I imagine everyone has their own sense of smell in terms of this smells good to me, this smells good. How do you bring kind of numbers and science to something that is, sort of unique to everybody?
Yeah, so it's all about understanding the consumer we're trying to deliver. We talk about what is the job of the scent that we're developing, what is the job of that product, and who is that consumer that we're targeting. We have very specific design targets, and we talk to those consumers, we understand the role that scent plays in their lives, and ultimately they're the ones who vote. Now, we also have to narrow things down, so we have to be in touch with what they like. And honestly, one of the hardest things about this industry is separating out what I like versus what that consumer is going to like.
Right. I imagine there's disappointing moments when you're like, oh my God, this smells amazing. People are going to love this. And then you go out to the consumer market, they're like, no, this is not for me.
It's a super humbling industry. And, we joke around, but, a typical perfumer, their success rate is less than 1%. They create hundreds and thousands of perfumes, and the number that make it to market is much less than that. So this industry in general, for a perfumer and olfactive scientist like me, extremely humbling. When something you love, again, consumers totally reject.
I mean, you've been there 3 decades now. What are you batting these days, Mike? Are you batting just about 1% like the average folks? Or to be, given where you're at, you're like, no, I'm at 4%, Mosh.
Yeah, I would love to sit here and say I'm at that next level, but I would be remiss to say that. So I think I'm still in that 1% range, but
so that's just one. That's 1 out of 100. That's 1 out of 100 cents that you create.
Yeah, exactly. That make it to the market, and so there will be other of those within the 100 that'll be quite good sense. It's just at the end of the day, only one can win in a specific project, and yeah, it's hard to pick that one. Very difficult.
One thing that came up during my visit, and we've discussed this, is scent trends. How do you go about tracking scent trends? And, and I should say big picture, Procter Gamble, you guys are big. You got shampoos, you got soaps, you got detergents, you got, you're in a number of divisions here. How does it work across all of your products? And how do you get a sense of, where things are headed, what consumers are preferring these days?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways that we look at. I think we have what we call a corporate group who is always trying to identify what are the next big movements. And, they're not looking at the next 6 months or 3 months. They're looking at what are the societal type of movements that are happening, and how do we make sure that we understand how the scent trends are going to evolve given those movements. So that's kind of the longer term. And then we also are always looking, and this is within our own group, we have a group of trend experts who are looking at, you take those longer movements, and then how do those trickle into what's happening over the next 3 to 5 years, even 1 to 2 years. And how do we make sure that we're launching scents that are, at the exact right time? Because, trends is a tough thing, because you have what we call fads, which are things that come really quick and then fade off fast. And then you have trends that are more enduring.
Can you get a sense in advance of whether something's going to be a fad or a trend?
I think we're starting, there's a lot of tools available today that weren't available 10, 15 years ago. Access to information, today is much greater than it ever was. And so I'd say our batting average in terms of identifying what the bigger movements are going to be has gotten much better. But you're still going to have things that you just think are going to make it, and then unfortunately just tail off.
It's interesting in talking to folks in fashion. They know they can go to certain cities, college campuses, high schools to get a sense of like where, what people are doing with their clothes, what colors that they're liking, to get a sense of what they need to be launching for the following spring or following fall. Are there places you go, give me a sense of scent trends. Where do you go? How do you go? Who do you go to get a sense for that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest influences on scent trends is actually foods, what we eat, drink, and how, connectivity today is again, significantly changed in the 31 years I've been here. So, there's food and drinks traveling from country to country, and the movement of those ingredients is happening at a much quicker pace. So one of the things, for example, that we often look at is the top 50 restaurants in the world. How is their menu changing over time? And are they bringing in new spices, new ingredients? And honestly, once those hit the top 50 restaurants, and you start to see them consistently hitting, all of a sudden you see them in your local restaurant, you see them going across. So food and beverage tends to be a significant one. And then we also are tracking what's happening on social media. Social media is a huge influence, and it doesn't take much for something to gain traction. And then before you know it, that trend is all over the place.
When it comes to social media, though, you can't smell TikTok, you can't smell Instagram. What are you searching for? How are you approaching social media?
More like signal ingredients. And so, we went through this movement of red fruits, for example, where 2 or 3 years ago it was cherry. And these red fruits are great because they have really strong, powerful color. There's a lot of health benefit associated with those. And so all of a sudden you start to see the number of hits on cherry go through the roof. And then if you look over the past year, that's evolved to strawberry. So, strawberry is now the super fruit that everybody's talking about. And eventually that's going to change to the next one, which we think might be lychee or something like that. But by tracking these ingredients that chefs are using and then seeing what's happened on social media, you can start to see what the pattern's going to be.
So that's fruit. I'm fascinated, though, by food and drink and top 50 restaurants. Over the last few years, even take us back like a decade or two, what are some of the things that you saw coming out of food and drink that led to innovation of Procter & Gamble and then products that we see on our shelves related to fabric care or shampoo or soap or whatever?
Yeah, so one of the areas, again, let's talk bigger picture trends that we look at is societal movements and bigger things that happen in society. So we talked about 9/11. What happened after 9/11 was there was a big movement on this more we call the cocooning type of scents. And so you had brands that are launching vanilla Coke, for example, and a lot of those type of cocooning type of notes, which led to things like
Wait, when you say cocooning, what do you mean?
Very warm, comforting.
So coming out of 9/11, not just in America, but globally, you saw a sense with an S, sense with a SC, that people were into a cocooning, warm notes, and that included vanilla.
Yeah, so you saw products from P&G like Downy Calm, for example, which is lavender vanilla. Again, had a big surge at that stage. And many other products across the company that had those type of notes saw a resurgence during that time. So fast forward to 4 years ago when COVID hit, one of the things that you saw was a significant transition to hygienic clean. The number of products that were being sold under the hygienic clean type of concept rose significantly. And what we saw is the scent trends went with it. And so all of a sudden, these notes that we discovered around, watery, very clean, very easy to smell type of notes became the trend from about 2020 to 2022, 23.
So that was very short-lived in the aftermath of the pandemic there.
Yes. But now what we're seeing is everyone, went super safe, super hygienic, trusted, tried and true, you're not going to take any risks, to now we're, I think, moving to a stage where, people want more expression. We went through that safe stage. Now we want more expression, more fun, more happiness, more joy. How do we use scent, as a reflection of ourselves and in more of a fun, exuberant type of way? So, the movement we're seeing today is more in that direction.
So that's so interesting. So, in many cases, you are stating emotions, happiness, joy. So happiness and joy, what are scents that lead us to that, or that you have found scientifically people connect to that?
Yep. So we're going to smell a sample of that here in a little bit, but usually what we're finding for joy is in the more fruity, and when you think fruity, we think of it in different ways, but more tropical fruits, more your guava, passion fruit, those type of notes. And then we talked about the red fruits, things like strawberry, cherry, notes like that, or what we're finding today are driving that happiness, joy, and that self-expression.
And you guys are a global brand. You sell here in the US, but of course around the world, as you have for decades. I'm curious as to certain populations, certain regions of the world, and what you notice about how much scent they like, what types of scent that they like. And then also, we are a melting pot here in America, as we've seen various immigration trends, how that's impacted the products here in the US as well.
Yes. So we do design perfumes and products for, over 100 countries around the world. And we do see that scent preferences are very different around the world. And so whenever we're designing a scent for, Philippines or for United Kingdom, we have to understand one of the big parts of our role as an olfactive scientist is understanding exactly what are the types of scents that consumer has used in the past. So we call it their come from state. So what do they know and what is familiar? And then connecting with, where are the trends in the region and how do you delight them in a new way? And so doing that across multiple countries, as you can imagine, is quite difficult. You need to be in touch with each of those regions. And we have people in the region helping us, but there's nothing that beats being on the ground and actually smelling exactly what they're smelling and eating what they're eating.
Are there rules of thumb though when it comes to, speaking in vast geographic terms, Africa, Europe, Asia, Latin America, North America, in terms of general like do's and don'ts for each region?
Oh, absolutely. There's character do's and don'ts. So in other words, we have fun with our Japanese colleagues. You think of the concept of sweet. There's pleasantly sweet, and then there's heavy, sickly sweet. And what they'll say often is that Americans love the sickly sweet, which is your caramel, your really sweet gourmand type of notes. And they're absolutely true. But what they say there is they like pleasantly sweet. So super light, and even if you look at the foods that they eat, if you go and eat some of the desserts in Japan, they're much lighter than they are here in the US, for example. And so, yeah, there's do's and don'ts and rules that, we try to track and again, make sure that we can design winning perfumes accordingly.
Yeah. And then when it comes to your fabric care products, you have Tide, you have Gain, you have, the various brands. Is there a breakdown geographically in the US, ethnically in the US, when it comes to each of those brands and also the scent profile that you give them?
Yeah, I'd say across the US in general, the preferences are I'd say somewhat similar.
Wait, so whether you're talking Alaska, Alabama, Maine, New York, pretty similar.
Pretty similar. And then what we'll find though is whenever a consumer shows up at the shelf, what they might look for first is what will change. So the proportion of the population that likes fruity scents versus floral scents versus gourmand scents is what you'll find will change across regions and across ethnic groups.
I think we all have these moments where like you're walking down the street or you enter some building and you smell something and immediately brings back a memory. It could be 30 years old, 40 years old, and like it takes you there. And as a scientist, Mike, can you explain how our brains process scent and why it's so closely tied to memories and emotion in a way that sometimes seeing something or hearing something, certainly music does that too, but there's something to smelling something that like has this immediate impact?
Yep. No, that's a great question. This is a amazing area of research. So the sense of smell is probably the least understood of the senses. So just to give perspective, the first Nobel Prize for understanding olfaction was just in the early 2000s.
Oh, relatively recent. Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at the other senses, it goes way back. And so it's very recent, and as a result of that, that was groundbreaking in 2004. Now there's a lot of academia and industry who are pursuing how do you understand exactly how it works even better. But generically, what we would say is that whenever you smell something enters your nose, and whether it's a flower in nature or you're walking down the streets of New York City, a scent will enter your nose. Most of us have about 400 olfactive receptors. The materials that enter the nose will trigger those receptors. Now, what makes it super complicating is that each receptor can receive multiple molecules, and one molecule can trigger multiple receptors. So when you think of like whenever it enters the nose, it's like hitting a bunch of piano keys all at once, and then there's a resulting note. So all those materials that enter your nose hit the receptors, and it sends a signal to the olfactive bulb. And what's unique about olfaction compared to your other senses is the olfactive bulb sits at the front of the limbic system, which is where your memories and emotions are processed. And so it is the sense that whenever you smell something, whatever you associate with that at that moment, that will stay in your memory for, as you said, 20, 30, 40 years. So the other senses are not as closely linked to memories and emotions as scent is. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, certainly. And when it comes to scent perception, is there an aspect of it that is learned versus innate?
Yeah, so there's some great studies that have been done on this exact topic. And so what has been found is that most of your scent associations, again, because your associations happen kind of at the same part of the brain, are indeed learned.
Learn meaning like at some stage of the game, we're told like that's a bad smell, that's a good smell?
Yeah, or even more distinctive, that's a lavender, that's a rose, that's a, it could be anything.
Labeling those scents, yeah.
Labeling. And so however it's labeled to you, the first time, second time, third time is how you're going to remember that. And so what we found, and this is the fascinating part of perfumery, is, lavender is a great case study of lavender is indigenous to Europe mostly. It's in other areas, but Europe. So if you're in Europe and you put lavender on the front of a package, it better smell like lavender. They know exactly what it is. There's no questions asked. In North America, in the US, when lavender was kind of a cool concept, but no one really knew what it smelled like, a lot of manufacturers, including P&G, launched more gourmand, creamy type of scents. And again, like I said, that was during that cocooning phase. And so most consumers in the US associate lavender with more of these creamy, caring type of notes.
Right. So when we say lavender, it means something different to all these
It means something
countries, to all
different.
these people.
Yeah, and if I go to China, it's more soapy type of note is how they associate lavender. So we can have all the technical language of what lavender smells like, camphoraceous, all these nice technical descriptors. But whenever we want to launch a product in a new region, how we describe it doesn't really matter. It's how the consumer interprets that note.
Actually, along those lines, going to the another sense here, this vision. When I was at Procter Gamble last year, you guys showcased to me what white is to each culture, like what clean white looks like, to the American eye versus the European eye versus the Latin American eye. And folks, it is very different. What we think might still look dirty looks clean to another culture. And so what you guys have to do there, I guess, is think about all the senses and then research how we each define effectively the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So our technical language, we have about 115 descriptors. White is one color. We have 115 descriptors. So whenever we try to describe things with consumers, we have to find out exactly how they would interpret that type of note.
And I'm curious, I imagine you're deep in this science. I imagine not all of our noses are created equal. Are there like super sniffers, like people who can sense, certain smells that the majority of people can't? I mean, is there a framework? Are there numbers here in terms of like what percentage of the population can sniff things that no one else can?
Yeah, so I don't know the range of the population, but we do absolutely see the ends of the spectrum. So we see the super sniffers. It's like the second they smell, you would think they work in the perfume area because they can describe the scents. They have a great sense of smell.
Right. So they might be able to smell something far, far away that the rest of us like haven't smelled yet.
Yep, or articulate it in a way that's very accurate. But then you have the other end of the spectrum. We call it anosmia. Is you'll have certain notes like musks are known to do this, and some amber is one that you'll have one person smell it and their eyes are watering and they can't stand it. Another person will be shoving it in their nose like, what do you I can't smell anything. And so some of us have anosmias to certain notes, and we just don't perceive them. And so I'd say we have each end of those spectrum, but there's a big average in the middle of average sniffers.
And what does that mean to the folks in your labs creating stuff? You have to accommodate those who might have more difficulty, but you don't want to overwhelm those that are super sensitive either.
Exactly. So yeah, that's again part of the learned, and then how we use consumer data as well to help guide our decisions. Because ultimately, we can smell all we want in the lab, but we have to get it in front of the consumer and make sure that the way we're interpreting is how they're seeing it too.
We talked geography. I'm curious, age range, age groups, and genders. Do you see interesting splits there between men and women, younger people, older people, in terms of some of the trend lines you've been seeing?
So in general, this is just what I've seen is that the younger, the more perceptive. So the more aware, the more descriptive. As you get a little bit older, if you use your sense of smell a little bit less, it tends to get a little bit less refined. But overall, you'll find most consumers across ages, tend to smell pretty similarly. I think we have seen men be a little bit less interested, maybe. So I don't know if it's a sense of smell or less interested in scent in general. So their description gets a little bit less over time.
And we were talking scent trends, but I mean, obviously, some of your products across the spectrum, not just in fabric care, have very distinctive scents, and they've been that way for a very long time. How important is that to a brand that, like, if you gave me a blind test, I could tell you whether it was Tide or Gain? How key is that to a brand, even as you try to chase the various trends out there?
Yeah, no, what we've seen over time is that scent can play a huge role in elevating the equity of our brands. So if you think of the smell of clean, Tide has defined the smell of clean for many, many years. Downy April Fresh has defined the smell of softness for many, many years. And so we call it iconicity. And our goal is that each of our, big SKUs on the market, iconic SKUs have iconic scents, and that consumers, the second they smell them, they don't even have to have the name on it. they quickly relate that to that brand. And I think when you reach that iconic stage is when you know you have a perfume that is fantastic and can help drive the perception of the brand.
So I have a question for you regarding health here. There has been various headlines in recent years about the impact of artificial chemicals, the impact on health here. I know a number of your product lines. You also have launched scent-free lines as well. How do you approach things at Procter Gamble when it comes to the impact that the various chemicals and products that you put out have on our health?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say we look at it from multiple different angles. I think, one of the reasons I've stayed at P&G 31 years is we have what we call our PVPs, our purpose, values, and principles. And one of those underlying ones is we're going to launch safe products. And then how we do that, there's multiple ways. I think as much as perfumery is an art, it's also a science. And so our perfumers, whenever they sit at their computer and they start to formulate their perfume, they have at their disposal materials that are safe and available around the world. And so they know for each region exactly what they can and can't use. So they can select accordingly. I think second is we employ hundreds of scientists, and a big proportion of those scientists are dedicated to the safety of our products. We look at safety and efficacy. Is it safe and does it work? And a lot of the scientists dedicated to that. And then lastly, I'd say we work with a lot of the industry scientists as well. So the industry bodies like IFRA, the Fragrance Conservatory also. So we partner with them and their scientists to make sure that we're taking the best body of evidence before as decisions are made on ingredients. There's also been a lot of discussion on transparency. I think historically perfume has been one of those areas that have been considered a black box. But you'll see those agencies that I mentioned and Smart Label and other areas that P&G has partnered is focused on how do we increase transparency so consumers know exactly what they're putting on their clothes or their body.
And do you have a sense, just broad strokes, when it comes to what percent of the population these days is looking at fragrance-free products versus various fragrances?
Yeah, it depends on the category. I'd say anywhere from 5 to 15%, somewhere in that range. Now you might have some areas that might be a little higher, a little lower than that, but in general, it tends to be in that 5 to 15% range. And so we always want to make sure that we have product offerings that suit that job for that consumer. But a lot of people like scent as well, so we have a range in most of our brands as well.
Yeah. Speaking of scent here, I have the box you guys sent me. A discovery box, a scent discovery box with 10 different bottles here. Folks, if you are listening to this, we also put this on YouTube, so you get more of a visual here. You're going to take me through this now, Mike, and test me. Maybe if I do well enough, you're like, listen, you need to move to Cincinnati and become a master perfumer.
Hey, we're always hiring.
All right, I'm opening this box here just to give folks a sense who are listening. It is 10 look-alike white bottles. Each of them have one letter on them. And you've told me, Mike, that we're going to begin with the bottle with the letter G.
Yep. So the first 5 smells that we're going to go through are going to be some of the smells that are currently available on the market today. And we'll see how well you can describe them.
How well I can describe them. For reference, you have not given me your descriptor dictionary of 115 terms I can use. So no. I'll do the best within my ability without having a handy thesaurus next to me.
That sounds perfect.
All right. So I have G. Do you want me to open it up here?
Yep. We can start with G.
Okay, we're going to start with G. And sorry, these are very light bottles. Is there powder in these bottles, or is it
the beads, the scent beads?
Okay. Is this Tide that I'm smelling?
Nope.
No? It smells very like it's sort of what you were describing earlier. The kind of post 9/11 has a very clean smell to it.
You nailed it. So,
am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, watery
right.
and clean. It feels like.
Yep. So we call this our fresh smell of clean for the whole family type of scent. So you get citrus, you get fruits, in a beautiful floral, but very crisp, very clean, very easy to understand.
I know I said Tide. It feels. Am I off? Am I off by a lot here? I don't know. It kind of like it.
It's Unstoppables, but it's in the fresh camp.
All right, so we're in the family here. All
You're
right,
in the family.
G,
you did good.
All right, so that was G.
Yep. So then we'll go to U.
We're gonna go to U now. The letter U. Next bottle up. Okay, U. Oh. Like this feels like similar to like body soap that I've used in the past. It feels like silky, creamy. That's sort of how I would describe this one.
Yep. No, very good. I think it's very floral. We call it rose violet, very creamy. Very. I like your descriptor of silky smooth.
Is that in your descriptor? Are you adding that to your term, or is that one of the terms?
Silky is not smooth.
Not silky.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can take silky.
Yeah. All right. We'll add it. But no, this we call this kind of the DNA of North America fabric softener.
Okay.
And so that the smell of North America, like iconic smells we talked about earlier, that's the iconic smell of North America.
And some of these fragrances that I'm smelling, are they strictly being used for your fabric care, or are you using them across your other products as well?
These are strictly in fabric care.
Got it. Okay. So we did G, we did U. Next up is R.
R.
Okay. Little beads in here. R. I feel like I had a cologne that smells similar to this one in high school. Is it? Yeah, you're nodding your head. I feel like I had this from like an Abercrombie or something when I was in high school 30 years ago. This is that's the memories I'm getting as I sniff this right now.
Yep.
It feels like more, I want to say masculine.
Yep. So I think you
am I right?
Nailed it. Yeah. So this is more watery, more masculine. This is in more of a de-stress calming type of scent.
Okay.
It actually is liked pretty well among men and women, but it has a really crisp, watery.
I feel like I would wear this and stick a little bit on my neck and wear this home and see how my wife feels.
Yep. This is like a spa type of smell.
S is the next one. All right. Let's open this one up. By the way, do I need like a palate cleanser? Is there like a nose at some point? Like once I've smelled too many of these, like do you recommend like sniffing something else as like to cleanse things?
Yeah. So the industry standard is coffee beans. People tend to have coffee beans, but I don't think that's scientifically proven to do much. So we normally smell our sleeve or smell a paper towel. You can smell anything. You just got to change the rhythm.
All right.
Smell something different.
All right. So I'm smelling S here. Very flowery notes here.
Yes. So very flowery, very creamy, very what we call gourmand, a lot of vanilla, woody type of notes. And this would be in something that's more calming. So meant to like on your bed sheets, for example, this is a great calming, relaxed sleep type of note.
Very nice. All right. All right. That was S. N is next up here as we make our way halfway through our scent experiment here, folks. Okay. This also feels like sort of like R in sort of like, I feel like this reminds me of a cologne from yesteryear. Also, like, would vanilla be the right term for it or no?
Yes. So actually,
yes. Okay.
you may qualify for a job.
we may be saying, we didn't prepare this.
We did not prepare this. Just, I can say. But no.
All right. So
you're very in line. This is in the same family as the R. However, it's a little more creamy, a little lighter. So this is in a variant, like if, I talk about the DNA and some of the really crisp, fresh type of notes. If somebody wants a little bit lighter, because there's consumers out there that don't want quite as much scent, that's where this type of scent would fall in. It's a little bit lighter experience, but long lasting.
Some of these letters that I'm sniffing here, do you mix them with other letters, or are they each meant to be individual?
Meant to be individual, but you know what we've learned consumers do? They buy multiple and then mix them to create their own type of scents. So we've learned that consumers play around a lot with these beads.
Right, because you got the detergent, you got the fabric softener, you got the beads.
Yep. And
you might mix them up. All right. So next up here in your list is P.
Yep.
Is that right?
Okay.
P. This is very fruity.
So this is one of the new ones we're going to talk about.
Okay.
This is going to be in the Gain lineup.
Okay.
And what we're smelling here is, very crisp pineapple, juicy, tropical type of note, and then a really rich, pretty plumeria type of floral. But I love the fact that it stood out for you as
immediately. I mean, I had trouble describing some of these previous ones and was more speaking from memory or whatever. And this one I was like fruity, like it hit me right away. And this is what you say is for some people immediately brings joy and happiness.
Absolutely.
This scent.
Yes. It takes you straight to Hawaii or some tropical place.
It did. I want to mix a drink with this scent immediately.
Umbrella drink.
All right. W is up next here. Oh, this also feels like sort of candy fruity as well. This again, if I didn't get the previous drink, I'd definitely get this drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this one goes more the strawberry, and there's some rich, creamy notes as well in there. A little bit more on the complex, rich side, but also super fun with the strawberry, fruity type of note.
So when it comes to like fruit, there's also like there's artificial flavor fruit, and then there's fruit. Like banana is a good example of that. Where like I've had like banana ice cream that tastes like banana, and I've had banana that artificial banana taste. Is that also different across cultures? Like what one person's banana is not another person's banana, or strawberry, etc.
I'm glad you bring that up because banana is one of those that, from a perfumer standpoint, we love the concept of banana because you have unripe, crisp green part of it, then you have the creamy part. If it's more a little bit older, but it's hard to get those type of notes to win with consumers. They tend to be very polarizing for that reason. A lot of people, the second they smell it, they go banana runts, and it's no longer clean.
Well, I mean, for example, and not in the scent space, but like in the ice cream space, like if an ice cream shop has a banana flavor, like I am drawn to it immediately. My wife like hates it. Like
Yes.
she's like, can you get another flavor that I can share with you because I will not have that.
And that's why we can't get it to win because we have that polarization like that with banana.
Well, and laundry, of course, nobody wants to be doing separate laundry per person in the household, so you do need to come up with a compromise there.
Exactly, but some people do. Some people do it that way.
Okay, next up here we have K as we finish up our scent experiment here, folks. Okay, so I'm sniffing the bottle with the letter K on it. Okay, this is much more subtle. So the last two are very fruity. This is very like woodsy and flowery as far as I'm concerned.
Perfect. And so I get a big herbal, crisp type of note, and then real rich, woody type of note as well.
Yeah, woodsy.
Very cologne perfume inspired, like almost like a men's cologne.
Yeah, very much
very rich.
A men's cologne feel to K there. Okay, second to last here we get the letter H. Bottle with the letter H on it.
Yep.
All right. Okay, this also subtle, but like more of a fragrant, a flowery, a little softer feel than the last one. Soapy, I would almost describe it as.
Yeah, so there's a huge trend right now going on in fine fragrances that we're bringing to Unstoppables, and it's this mixture of what we call amber, moss, and sweetness. So one of the materials you actually smelled in Cincinnati. And so that combination of ingredients gives a super premium. This is one that as I've tried these products, I'm addicted to this one. The smell of this on fabrics throughout the day is fantastic. And again, it's leveraging some of those notes that are super hot right now.
I mean, this scent very much immediately triggers like hotels to me, like staying at a nice hotel, like new bed sheets on a hotel,
like a 5-star type experience.
Yeah, this letter H here is a 5-star hotel experience.
If you get a chance, wash with this one. You won't regret it.
All right. We'll reveal what H related to in a second. The last letter here in this experiment is Q. Okay, if H I feel like was much more potent. This is a little more subtle here. Also gives you sort of a fine feeling, like elite feeling, elevated feel, I would say.
Yep, definitely elevated feel. Very sophisticated, really rich, creamy, warm. We call it vetiver, is a woody type of note. But also has a nice citrus top, but very feminine, very elegant. Again, on things like bed linens and towels, it's just beautiful.
All right, so those are the 10 letters. I have some of your new Unstoppables here, Laundry Scent Booster, as well as Gain. So draw me the line here between the new Unstoppable scents and what I just smelled.
Yes. So the Unstoppables scents, the 3 that you have there in front of you, were developed, like we talked earlier, by the world-class perfumers in P&G and our collaborators. And the intent there is exactly how you describe them. They're upscale, they're premium, they're luxurious, they're meant to be that 5-star type of experience. And what you'll find with these is they're extremely long-lasting and linear during use. And so those last 3 scents that we smelled, the K, the H, and the Q, are the 3 scents in that lineup.
Oh, I see. So I'm holding up these Unstoppables here, these laundry scent boosters. So they go into the wash.
Yes.
And so what's interesting about the Unstoppable is that I don't think I've seen this listed so overtly before, but you list the top note, the middle note, and the base note here. So unstoppable number 9, eucalyptus, pine, cedarwood.
Yep, that was the first one we
3
smelled.
notes.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. The slightly more cologne type perfume.
And then you got number 26 here.
Yep, and that
also,
was
a very perfume sounding name too, like number 26.
Yep, very upscale and premium.
Yeah, this is rose, honey, and oak moss. Got it. And then
you can squeeze the bottles as well.
Squeezing the bottle, I get this.
Yep.
If you're ever in the store aisle, folks, you just squeeze the bottle to really get a sense of the smell here. And the number 37 is it bergamot? Is it orris?
Yep. Bergamot and orris. Yeah, that was the middle one that we smelled, the one that I'm addicted to.
There we go. That's number 37 for those of you keeping score at home.
Yeah.
All right. So those are the 3 unstoppables.
Yeah. So one comment on that, there's a group of consumers out there that want this. There's the first 5 that we smelled is kind of your smells of clean, with some moods and benefits. And then we have consumers who are looking for this elevated fine fragrance type experience. And so this is one of the first collections that, to me, brings it as close to home as possible for that elevated experience. So I was super happy that that's right where your comments went when you smelled them across the lineup.
Yeah. So mission accomplished from your vantage point.
Yes.
Mosh said 5-star hotel, and you're like, that's what we're going for here.
You can spell, and you picked them
folks,
right.
I tell you the truth here on this podcast. This is totally spur of the moment. This is a total experiment. None of this was planned. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so we got the elevated unstoppable experience, and then I imagine as I'm holding here the 2 gains, these were the fruity smells that I tried out.
Yeah. So to give you a bit of perspective on this one, so like I said, there's the core smell of clean. And then gain, stands for what we call irresistible freshness. So if you think of the gain scents, they tend to be, things that bring joy and delight, et cetera. But there's a group of consumers we call the happiness hunter. We coined them the happiness hunters. And so whenever they show up to the shelf, they are looking for what's new, what's experiential, what's holistically designed. And so, we designed this product from scratch. You can see the package, which is super experiential. You want to pick those up and smell them. And then they're holistically designed, again, with the perfumes like we described, the tropical perfume and the more fruity strawberry with some rich florals. And then we also have dual capsules in these products as well. So the long-lasting experience you get on your fabrics or towels or bed sheets, again, can last for days and weeks with the capsules that are part of the product as well. So holistically designed for delight from the second you open it all the way till the end of your usage.
Yeah, I think as I sniff these 2 Gain Tangos, I'm a more strawberry and shea guy versus a pina and plumeria guy.
Okay, so we differ a little there. I'm more on the tropical side.
You're more pina?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But that's good. We want something for everybody.
And what works in your household? What is your, I know you have, 2 kids?
4 kids.
2 daughters, 2 sons.
2 dogs.
2 pets, 2 dogs. How do you get agreement there?
Yeah, not easy. So my wife runs the shop. She's a hygienic clean.
The agreement is whatever the missus wants at home.
Yeah, she's a hygienic clean laundry detergent. And then absolutely is loving the elevated experience of the Unlimited collection. So when I brought those home, she immediately tried them, and that's evolving to our favorite.
Here's Mike. You've done this for a very long time. I'm very happy with your most recent achievement here. You're batting slightly more than 1 out of 100 at home.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully.
Hopefully, we'll see when we go home tonight. Mike, anything I'm missing here? Anything that are there misconceptions out there, or anything you want to clear up? Questions that you often get from people about what you do, how things work there, or just questions consumers have about your products.
I think just, me being in the scent world, scent plays a very significant role in our lives in many different ways, in a social, emotional, functional ways. And, I think we, sometimes, like you talked about the safety, it gets questioned, but, hopefully there's confidence that we have, the right science behind the decisions we're making on materials. I think the other slight misconception is the concept of natural ingredients versus man-made ingredients. It's pretty fascinating to look at the history of natural ingredients. So if you go back, the first perfumer coined, by the way, was in like 1200 BC, a lady named Taputi, and all they used was natural ingredients.
Where was this?
It was in the Middle East somewhere, but I can't remember the exact region.
Let me Google it while we talk.
Yeah.
Taputi,
a
chemist and perfumer. She's one of the world's first recorded in Babylonia.
Babylonia, okay.
There you go. In modern day Iraq.
And so if you look at, let's talk 1200 BC and even before that, all the way up to the late 1800s, most of what was available was natural materials. And then, even within a natural material, though, take a rose, for example, you can analytically find about 240 chemicals in a rose. And so the quality and the richness and texture that you get from a natural is extremely complex. But naturals also come with challenges. So you have crop to crop variations. In Florida, 7 or 8 years ago, the entire grapefruit crop got wiped out by the storms. So if you're using natural grapefruit, you had to go to an alternative. And so naturals just inherently have some challenges. But starting in the early 1900s, chemists started to find ways to synthesize molecules that smelled what we call nature identical. And so you can make a beautiful rose with about 40 ingredients that mimics nature, but is done in a way that is sustainable and easy to manufacture. There's no crop to crop variation on the molecules. And so that's some of the misconception. We love naturals. We love the complexity they bring. But most perfumes that you find out there in any category is going to have a blend of naturals plus synthetic or man-made chemicals.
And how often do you guys, today we've been talking about some of your new Unstoppable, some of your new Gain product. How often, are you launching new fragrances these days, Mike?
Every 6 months, we are launching new fragrances across our core brands. And so you'll find, and some brands do even more than that. Now they're going to seasonal collections, because consumers, like I mentioned, that happiness hunter, they're in every category. And so then when they go to the shelf, it's what's new. And so we want to make sure that we're providing them some offerings to select from.
You ever get feedback, though, from folks being like, wait, what happened to the thing from last? You love that scent.
That's one of the watch outs. But, you track sales and see if they're doing well, then you can decide whether you bring that back.
And some become part of the permanent collection.
Exactly.
If they're doing well enough.
Yeah, or you bring it back and make it a big deal when you bring it back.
Mike, this has been fascinating. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking me through the test. And it sounds like I need to come back to Cincinnati because I'm on the higher end of olfactory senses.
You're always welcome. We can see if your batting average is better than 1%. How's that?
Listen, that's a great standard to go by, right? Ultimately, you're like, I get 1 out of 100 right. They're like, and I've been employed for 30 years.
Celebrate that.
There you go. Mike, it's been great chatting.
It's great chatting with you. Thanks a lot for having me.